Dear writer, you need to quit. This is the show that helps you know what to quit, what to keep, and what to question. My name is Becca Syme, and I'm a Gallup certified strengths coach with thousands of hours of coaching 6 and 7 figure authors, mid-listers, major award winners, and new authors alike, because everyone needs to quit something. Anyone can tell you what worked for them, and of course they say it might not work for you, but they can't tell you why. Well, I can tell you why. Welcome to the QuitCast. Hi, and welcome to episode 15 of the QuitCast. And today we're going to be talking about one of the Strengths for Writers themes, which is Maximizer. And if you haven't heard me talk about strengths before, it is the Clifton Strengths Finder assessment. It's a personality metric. It's specifically meant to measure how you are successful. And so through my coaching of writers, we've taken this metric and we've adapted it out of the corporate environment, which is where there's already an amazing amount of information about how to use strengths. And I've adapted it to specifically writers. And so this is meant to be a way for people who are in the creative profession to figure out how to utilize these natural areas of talent in the work that they're creating. And so today we're going to be talking about Maximizer, which is one of the themes of talent in the strengths assessment. And so we're going to start off with a little bit of a description about what Maximizer sounds like, and then we're going to hit the strengths talk show. And today we have some really special guests with us. We have Adam Wright, who many of you may know is a great writer, high Maximizer writer, and Jen Bassman, who is a certified strengths coach and also is a fiction writer. And so I'm so excited to have her here. She has a great range of vocabulary for how to talk about Maximizer because she's a #1 Maximizer herself. And then we have one of my favorite authors, Angie Fox. You may know her as a USA Today and New York Times bestseller. She has an incredible series out, which you can check out in the show notes. And I love, love, love her writing. She absolutely is a Maximizer author, high Maximizer. And so we're going to have the Strengths for Writers talk show after we hear from Terry Schott and Becca Syme. So take it away, Terry and Becca. A Maximizer might say things like, I am committed to excellence, or I will focus on what is strong and manage around what is weak. Or like Maximizers tend to dislike weakness fixing. Like they don't like to talk about weaknesses because they want to focus on where they're strong. So there's a couple of different development strengths, and learner is one of them, which you have, right? And developer is kind of in your middle somewhere. That's another one. Maximizer's the third one. Developers want to take something that is raw and make it mature. So they want to develop raw talent. Maximizers want to take something that is already good and make it excellent. So they want to take something that is, it's the good to great concept, right? And so that's a very high Maximizer trait, is that good to great concept. The upside of Maximizer, especially if you're very, very high, is that you'll tend to already be like, they want to be around the best people. They want to do the best work. They want to associate with the best stuff.
So then a maximizer, they try to be the greatest they can be. And are they always forever striving as well to always get better each time as well?
In fact, I would say that's one of the keynote places that feeling of never measuring up can come from. Achiever is often like that. Maximizer, competition, and significance can often produce that, of feeling like there's always a higher level I could get to. Right. And so even when I know that I'm the best, even if I were to say I am the best dialogue writer in film currently today, if I had any shades of learner, maximizer, developer, or significance, I would still want to get better than I am, so that no one would ever be able to beat me, right? Like,
right.
Or be aware that there are other areas where I'm not as good, where I could get better. I have had to learn as a maximizer what I can let go and what I can't. So, for instance, talking about typos, me years and years ago, I had a different attitude about editing than I have
Sure.
today, because I really thought there was a way to get it perfect. I really
Yep.
did when I first started. And when I learned there wasn't, then I started being okay releasing stuff and letting people find mistakes and then coming back to me with it. But
Right.
the downside of Maximizer is that if you think something is perfect and then someone tells you it isn't, that can feel very personal. And so
Yeah.
understanding as a maximizer that like actually other people helping you get better is a good thing, that's a
Yeah.
learning curve. And so one of the downsides that we were just talking about with high maximizer is that it's often difficult to know when you've made something good enough. Like as a maximizer, you always will feel like on some level, but I could make it better, but I could make it better, especially if you can see where it could potentially be better. And so like all strengths, there's always the upsides and the downsides. The upside as a writer is if you are a maximizer and you really feel committed to writing, there's a good chance you're going to be good at it, because maximizers want to do things where they're excellent and they don't have the obsession with sort of fame and notoriety than I think some of the other strengths can have. And so they tend to be attracted to things where they know they can just produce something really excellent and they can be at the top of their game. And so obviously the word maximize means you want to get the most out of or the best out of something. And that's kind of maximizer. And so Jen, just because you are a number one maximizer and also a strengths coach, what would you add to that definition or clarify if you could say, this is what maximizer is to me?
It is not a cocky, I want to be the best. It's just an internal drive to be the best. We don't, I guess I should say as a maximizer, I don't walk around thinking that when I've done something well or I've done something great, that, oh my gosh, I'm the best person ever. It's just more pride that, you know, I did something to the excellent.
Wow. Yeah. 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 And excellence is typically a real big buzzword. Like what I want isn't just good. I don't want a book that's good. I want a book that is excellent or superb or, you know, the best that I could do. And so knowing when, and we kind of have all talked about this in varying degrees, but knowing when something is good enough or when it's hit its excellence point is a big deal. So, so let's start then with Adam. Since you've learned about your maximizer, how do you see that strength acting in your books or maybe even in your method of prep for your writing?
Well, I think in my books, I tend to focus on the things that I'm best at writing, which is like action and humor. And I kind of gloss over the things I'm not so good at, like romance. So I've written quite a few genres during my career. And I think because I'm a maximizer, as I've gone on, I've seen where my strengths lie and I focus more on those areas. And in book prep, so I'm high intellection. So because I maximize as well, I take the time to maximize the intellection and make sure I, you know, go for a walk and think about what I'm doing before I start writing even.
Yeah, like you want the idea of the book or the concept to be as good as it possibly can be before you really commit like words to page. Yeah, that makes total sense.
I might get an idea, but then I think, well, let's go a bit deeper and see if it might be a bit better.
Yeah. Angie, what about you? How have you seen this strength sort of show itself in either your books or your method of book prep?
Well, it explained to me a lot about my process because I came from an ad writing background. And so I always knew if I was writing a television ad or a campaign or something, I knew I would plot it out. I knew beginning, middle, end. I knew what I wanted to say. And I couldn't figure out why I was not achieving that in my books. You know, I wasn't really a good plotter. I was more of a pantser, but yet not a pantser in a way that a lot of other pantsers were, where they would just enjoyed falling into a book with no idea. I always knew my title. I always knew what excited me about the book and what would be unique. And like Adam, I really gave it a lot of thought. So I thought, if I'm thinking about this, why am I not a plotter? And I realized after I learned that I was a maximizer that I will blow holes in any single plot I try to develop. I will see the roadblocks. I will see what might be wrong with it. I will kill the little plot buddy. I shouldn't say that. But I will just basically, I will murder a plot before it started. So I realized that what really gets me motivated and excited are the ideas behind it. So I've accepted that part of myself, and I just plow forward, and it's all about ideas. And I just know that I had to come up with a different way to actually stay on target with my plots. So I developed a checkpoint system where I know kind of as I'm going through where I am, where I need to be, am I on track as far as what really needs to happen to give the structure? But I know that if I know too much going in, it'll just be bad from a maximizer standpoint. So,
I can relate.
Yeah.
Well, and Jen, I was going to say too, like, how do you see this? Because you're in such a cool place where a lot of our watchers will be of like, I'm learning about my strengths as I'm writing my early books. Like, how do you see this shaping how you will write books from here on out?
Well, it really helped me understand what stalls me in the process. So that, like Angie said, I'm developing a checklist of just, hey, you need to move forward. And I give kind of put deadlines on some things. Like her, I think through things initially, and I'll start blowing holes through the plot without. I can totally relate to everything she said, but the biggest thing to me
sorry.
Yeah,
I can totally relate to that.
What you have to look forward to, right?
Yay!
Hey, it was already there. You're
right.
You don't want to watch TV with me.
Yeah.
But actually, one of the biggest understandings that came out of learning about this maximizer talent was I understood far better why the editing process is so hard for me. Because when you're going through editing, you're constantly pointing out weaknesses and mistakes. And that's not what I want to look at. That's not what I want to focus on. I just, I want to focus on the good stuff. And so, began to understand why I was taking some of that personally, or just kind of avoiding that altogether.
Yeah, especially because depending on what your supporting talents are as a maximizer, it can be more and more difficult to receive criticism.
Yeah.
Not because you don't want it to be better, but because, and this is from my standpoint, I have a high connectedness maximizer. Like, I wouldn't show someone something that I didn't think was the best that I could do. And so on some level, then it becomes much harder. It's been a real learning curve for me as a maximizer, because I also have this talent high, to learn how to take criticism and see it as a learning process and not as you did this wrong and you suck at this kind of a thing. So that's been a learning process for me. Since learning about your maximizer, and I'm going to ask all of you this question, how much do you worry about how good your books are? And let's start with Adam again. How much do you worry about how good your books are? And has knowing about maximizer helped to alleviate that, or do you still push for that quality?
I worry a lot. When I'm writing, I always think this is the worst book I've ever written.
Yeah.
Knowing
Me
about
too.
the maximizer.
I'm just going to raise my hand. Yeah. Not about your books, but about mine.
Yeah. Knowing about maximizer does help, because we had this discussion before. And like now I realize that it's something inside of me that's, it can never be perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. So at some point I have to say, well, that's the book, that's good enough, it's going to go out.
Yeah.
I think the way I get around thinking it's not good enough is I just depend on what the readers think of it, really. So if they all like it, then I'm satisfied. Yeah. I'm just writing to entertain the readers.
Yep, exactly. Angie, what about you?
I worry a lot. And actually I've tried not to. I've tried to understand that that's just my default, and to realize what's real and what's not. But it is tough. it has helped me, and it has hurt me. I'll give an example. I've got this series, and people were waiting. I release a book in the spring and in the fall, and it's an indie series, and I was writing my fall book over the summer, and I realized that there are these two characters that always have this great conflict, and it evolves as they evolve. And the conflict that I had planned wasn't conflicty enough. It just wasn't, it didn't zing enough. And it was perfectly passable. My editor was like, why are you having a problem with this? I'm like, no. It's not internal enough. It's more of an external conflict. I need more internal conflict, and I can't figure out what that is. So I had my critique partner giving me suggestions, my editor, I was asking like friends who don't write, who didn't care, which I thought maybe that would be a better, and it was driving me nuts. And I would show up to, I have writing hours. I'd show up to work every day for 3 or 4 hours, and I didn't write for a month and a half. All I did was focus on this plot issue. It's this gangster ghost, and he's running into this gangster police, and it's like, how do you, or the not gangster police, but these police, and how does he do something that's unique? And everybody's like, well, he has to hide. I'm like, no, he did that 4 books ago for a different reason. It's not unique enough. He has to be angry about this. No, it's not organic enough. And I finally figured it out. He basically impersonates a police officer, and it worked out wonderfully. But it took me a month and a half to figure out what it needed to be. The book was late. The book ended up being a post-Thanksgiving rather than a fall book, which is terrible for a paranormal mystery. That's not a really good release window. And I knew it. And I sacrificed ranking. I sacrificed the money I'd make off that book because I wanted it to be the best book it could be. And, I don't know if readers even could tell the difference between like the different subplots, but I could. And it would have driven me crazy to release a book where I didn't feel like that subplot was completely unique.
Yeah.
So
because you knew that it could be better than it was. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. Like the upside, I think, of Maximizer is that the readers, I feel like for myself, the readers are going to be happy with what I give them because I've worked to make it the best that it could be. But it absolutely makes it difficult when I get stuck. And I'll say I have similar stories as a Maximizer of it's just not the best that it could be yet. And I know it. And I can't always explain how I know it. And that might partly be the strategic as well. Like I can just see that ahead there's something that needs to change. And the hard part is I can't talk myself out of caring. Like as a high Maximizer, if I have already decided that it could be better than it is, I can't stop myself from caring about it. So that is definitely a downside. But also I would say for the readers, I do think that it's an upside for the readers. So Jen, what about you? How are you, how much do you worry about how good books are, especially as you're starting to think about, these are going to be things that I'm going to release and I'm worried about how they're going to be taken or how excellent they are compared to other books, or how does that work for you?
Well, first of all, y'all are making me feel a lot better.
Yeah.
A little less crazy. I worry about it a lot. Not because anybody has a book to compare, I guess I'm lucky in that regard, but, there are some public pieces out, my blog is, something that's out there, and I can totally relate to what everybody was saying because I sit there and I ruminate over words. In fact, I've got a blog post that should have gone up a couple weeks ago and it just doesn't feel right. It's not quite there, which is funny because I come from a newspaper background where you didn't have a whole heck of a lot of time to, think about things. You just kind of published what you had and went for it and hope for the best, so to speak. But, you kind of got to start over every day, I guess is one way to look at it. But, with the internet, with, publishing online, you can go back and change things. Nothing's really forever. Nothing's permanent, which kind of helps out a little bit. But with my book, it's why it's taken me so dang long to get it to get it done, to get it written and completed, is because I keep going back and looking at things when I really probably need to develop some system on my computer where, you know, whatever's written gets locked down and I can't touch it.
Yeah, I will say for me, and I'm not sure about Adam or Angie, but the longest process for me in writing was my first book, like the first book that I actually had published. And then once I realized that my standards were way so much higher than what my editor, you know, said they needed to be, then I was like, okay, I'm going to give it to her faster. Like I'm going to get it to her more quickly. And so I'm always hopeful that with maximizers, like we'll learn that our process is, it's okay for it to be long, but it can also be shorter than it is, and we'll still get where we want to get. But yeah, I agree. I can't release stuff before I feel like it's the best I could do. It's just not, it's not in my nature.
And recognition actually puts pressure on a maximizer. When I had a book that hit the New York Times list, I thought I was like in the climax phase of the next book. And I thought, well, how am I ever going to make this book a New York Times bestseller? That just, it ruined my writing for a month. I finally had to give myself permission to write badly, in my mind, badly, because to get to writing again. So in a way, it's almost like not a good thing. You know, you just want to do your work. And like I said, maximizers doesn't mean you're judging anybody else's work. I think all these writers that write fast are fantastic. Like, how do you do it? And they're like, Anne, she's got to chill out. So to them, it's chilling out. And to me, it's, well, how do you not obsess about every word?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And chilling out to me does not actually look like not caring about what I put on the page. I think that's the other piece that's super important about both Achiever and Maximizer is, to me, being not stressed is knowing that what I put out is the best I could do. I don't actually feel stressed out by making things really great. Like that's something that's fun for me, right? Because I'm a maximizer. And so I feel like both with Maximizer and Achiever, it's about where does your stress really come from? If I were to put books out that I felt I wasn't proud of, that would be a totally different, which I have in the past, right? Like my very first book I look at now and I'm like, please don't read that. It's awful. And
that's Maximizer too, because I feel the same way. You know, and it launched my career and it was great, but I'm like, no. And I love edits too. I love people telling me what might be wrong.
You didn't torture me enough. I still resonate with that. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. Yeah. And that, I think that feel like that's a maximizer thing. Adam, what about you? Are you always looking for ways to improve your process?
I am, yes. In the past, it's led me down a few wrong roads as well. Because if you are a writer, you're looking to try and improve your process, you'll see that there's a lot of books out there about how to plot and write faster by plotting everything out. Well, just isn't how I work. So I went down that road for a while. It didn't work out very well. Same with Pomodoro sprints as well. Because like Angie says, it's not about the number of words, whereas a lot of those things are focused on numbers all the time. So yeah. But I suppose the best thing I did to improve my process was take the Write Better Faster class and realize why I'm like that, why I'm a bit different to, you know, other people, and everyone's different and have their own individual way of doing things.
Yeah.
And that's really helped me.
Yeah. And I feel like not only that, but maximizers really like StrengthsFinder. And Jen and I talked about this when she had her first one-on-one, because she just got so psyched about strength, because it was Write Better Faster. So we were doing all kinds of stuff, but really we focused almost all of our time on her StrengthsFinder, because as a maximizer, the thought that you could get exponentially better in these areas where you have natural ability is so exciting. Because what I want is to take, as a maximizer, is to take this talent that I have and see it be the best that it could be. And so, yeah, absolutely. The cool thing, I think, in watching a number one maximizer too, as opposed to like my maximizer is much lower than that, but like a number one maximizer, it was like, and Jen, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but it felt like the strengths were sort of speaking your language, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I finally felt like I found home. Somebody that was talking to me in a way that made sense and actually felt good.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. With maximizer writers and just high maximizers in general, you'll hear us use a lot of buzzwords like success and excellence and perfection and things like that. The interesting conversation that we had as maximizers when we were doing the talk show was, should we talk about this sort of obsession with quality that we have? Because of course, when you talk about, especially doing something like a quality versus quantity, it seems to set up this expectation that a maximizer would think that they're better than other people. And that's definitely not what's happening. It's a completely internal standard and an internal drive. And the downside of having the conversations is that it can come across as judgmental. And so we had a really intense sort of conversation about, do we go ahead and say the things that we might want to say because they're going to come across bad to some people who don't have high maximizer? And I ended up coming to the conclusion that if we don't have these conversations, then we won't really realize how different we all are. And there are some people for whom the super high bar of excellence doesn't matter to them. They believe that when they put a good book out, they put a good book out, and how good or how excellent is not a metric that they would use. Or could it be better? Could it be better is not a conversation that they would have with themselves, because they just don't have a high maximizer. And so there's nothing wrong with not having high maximizer. But we also wanted to be able to say for ourselves that quality does really matter to a maximizer. And so seeing something that isn't quite where it could be, or where there could be a higher level of excellence that would be shot for, that could be attained, that the maximizer will want to go for that. Interestingly, it's the same thing, that maximizer capacity, that draws me towards StrengthsFinder. I love talking about success and where people could be excellent. And when what I say tends not to resonate with people, it's partly because that excellence language doesn't resonate with them. So I've learned to have different conversations about what's great about StrengthsFinder, because I realize that not everybody gets as excited about seeing where you could be a standout as I do. And I'm the kind of person who gets really psyched when I see that someone could have a significant contribution somewhere because their level of excellence meets the challenge of their genre or their work or their world or their expectations. And I love seeing that. But again, that's a maximizer trait. And so it's just a quick reminder at the end of this cast that not everybody's going to resonate with this language, and that's okay. We do all of the different strengths so that through the process, you'll find the ones that you resonate with, the ones that are really true for you. And then everything else is just going to be gravy to know about people that you care about in your life. But the ones that really do resonate with you, it's so important to lean into those, because your effort and energy that you put in to the development areas of those strengths is going to be rewarded exponentially, as opposed to the sort of drudge and trudge of trying to bring up a very low ability. And not that it's not doable, it's just that it's so much less efficient. And again, for me, the question isn't, should you do one over the other? It's, we're going to do some of both, but I'd rather spend more of my time in areas where I know I could have excellence. So again, that's kind of some backstory about why we did the maximizer cast the way that we did, and I hope that that makes sense. So the point of this cast was to show other maximizers who are really resonating with this language that there is a place, absolutely, in this industry for quality. There is a place for making sure that books are exactly the way you want them to be. It may not be in certain circles, but it absolutely is appreciated by the people who appreciate it. And again, this is not a conversation about what you should or shouldn't do or what you should or shouldn't write. It's just to say, if this maximizer discussion resonates with you, there's probably a good reason for that, and you probably want to lean into that and adjust your expectations elsewhere. And so again, so glad to have you. Thank you so much for being here. I hope that you'll check out the books by these great writers, and I hope that you enjoyed this and that you'll subscribe. Please comment If you are a maximizer or if this resonated with you, we'd love to hear from you. It's always so nice to commiserate with other people who are wired like us. And so please do comment. For the Patreon people, we're going to start the first of our live Q&A coaching sessions for May next week. So if you've been waiting to sign up until you knew you'd be able to get into one of the live coaching sessions, please do go and sign up for the Addicts level tier on the Patreon today, because we're going to send those invites out pretty soon. And again, that is a 90-minute live coaching Q&A session with me for all the people who are on that particular tier. And it looks like we're going to have to start doing more of them because we're growing that tier, and that's awesome to hear about. So glad. So please do go over and check that out on the Patreon. And for now, I want to say thanks so much for watching the QuickCast. Thank you for listening and being here. I hope that it was helpful, and we will see you next time on the QuickCast.